Hi, my name is Andreana Bridges. I am the Administrative Associate for Change Today, Change Tomorrow. My pronouns are she, her, and her, sorry.
Yes. My name is Tyler Warner. I am the program coordinator for the gardening program here at Change Today, Change Tomorrow. And I use she and they pronouns.
So, do we want to start with maybe, what has happened since, we were here last in November, just, with Change Today, Change Tomorrow and everything going on?
So I would say since last November, we've I think we were kind of at a steady pace already at that point, because we kind of seen, a big takeoff. I'm new in my role as the administrative associate, but I was a part of the founding board of Change Today, Change Tomorrow. So it's been kind of amazing to see the growth of the organization since we started. We had a really big boost over the summer after the Feed the West program took off. And then, of course, we settled into the Change Center, have spread it across 5 different locations. So we are here, which this is kind of our administrative hub. And then we have the education hub, which is our East Broadway location. We have Fleet Street, which is where we do our Feed the West distribution out of. And then we have the LRCC, which is our where we have offices, and we did the pop-up shelter most recently for our unhoused population. So we host and hold all of our unhoused Umoja project stuff there. Public health, that's the word. And then we also have Pocket Change, which is our storefront that is strategically placed in white neighborhood to promote the interchange between Black-owned businesses and white consumerism. So we've expanded since November a lot. We're still holding fast to a lot of our programming that we've been doing, and we just kind of have some more stuff, little programs that are sprinkled in. We've taken on a couple more staff in the meantime, myself to be included, and we're working on being able to expand our staffing even more, because right now we have a total of 7 staff and 2 are full-time, that being our executive and deputy directors, and they're obviously stretched thin. So we're looking at expanding our staff and then hopefully consolidating our spaces into one. We're really looking at purchasing a building in the West End that can hold all of our programming, where there's better access to where we are for community members. And then we are in the heart of the community because we are really big about our board reflects our community, our staff reflects our community, and so we want to also be in the community.
No, we've added a lot of different locations, and that's mostly it, because I think the last check-in was, did you all come to Pocket Change opening? November was when Pocket Change opened, and then the Education Center was in January. Martin Luther King Day is when it was. And that's just a really cool addition. Azure Williams is the education director over there. They do NTI support, they do tutoring, they do a reading time once or twice a month, I think, with Miss Michelle. So there's a lot of really cool stuff that's come as far as outreach when it goes to the education center, and I know they've got a lot more cool stuff planned.
Yes, we've also in the meantime taken on interns. And they have helped us with not being so stretched thin, because we have a lot of different initiatives that they're helping with. So like Tyler was just talking about, our education space, that programming, our interns are kind of helping with that. And then on the public health side, we are also looking at doing a community needs assessment. And so we're having our interns help with that a lot. And in this community needs assessment, it's trying to just actually be the not the voice of the community, because the community has its own voice, but being the people who can put that to forefront. We're very strategic about the fact that we want the community to lead that assessment, and for that not to be us sitting here with our privilege saying what the community needs, but the community saying what they need, and us being the venue for that. And so that we also have that working on. The interns made me think of that. So we have the community needs assessment that we're looking at, and then just other ways that we can be not a voice for, but to be very intentional about how we assist the communities that we work with.
More facilitators, I think. We get people into the right places where they need to be to succeed and flourish.
One thing I wanted to know about personally is specifically your Houseless outreach. what kind of work are you doing specifically with the houseless communities?
So weekly we serve 100 hot meals, 100 cold meals, and then we provide change kits, which have a lot of different items in them that would help you get through a week, right? And so we do that every week. We recently did a pop-up shelter when temperatures were like, 8 or 9 degrees outside in Louisville. There are still people who get turned away from shelters because, just to be frank, like there's certain people that shelters want to help. And there are certain people that shelters don't want to help. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't have warmth, right? Like at freezing cold temperatures, that shouldn't be the way that we're moving who has a place to stay and who doesn't. Yeah. And because we're a needs-based organization, we made sure we could fit that need. So our Umoja team is amazing, and they literally set up a pop-up shelter in
less than 24 hours.
24 hours.
Easily 18, somewhere between 18 and 12 is what I'd say.
24 hours in order to be able to have a functioning shelter for what I think it was about 25.
Yeah, it was 25. And that was some crazy mobilization that happened there. We were reaching out to community partners. We have a button program where we have restaurants who are able to when you go through and check out, you can give them $10, which eventually we're able to cash in. And so that's one of the things that we were doing there, was trying to get those partners to come in and be feeding people, because, it's good food and people deserve good, warm food. Tacos, yes, please.
That's what we are looking to further expand our Umoja program, and looking into transitional housing in the near future. And so that's one of their big goals that they're working on, is moving into a space where they can start to look at transitional housing for folks.
And there's something, I own up to it, there's a lot of different arms in CTCT. Yes. They're doing something with technology right now. Do you know about that?
So the technology, it's to support the transitional living. So they're trying to build a system in order to support the transitional living program.
Yeah, so they've got hotspots and tablets and stuff that they're able to take with them when they do the 100 hot meals. Because if you think about it, the libraries, you have to get an appointment at this point to be able to go in and just to use the computer. Yes. And if you think about it, that means you can't check your email. There's just you can't do research, look up where how to get a job or where to get a job, that's a barrier in being able to say hey, we've got this hotspot in this iPad. You can get on Facebook,
100%.
Message your friends, I don't know,
during COVID, where outside of a lot of our work that we do, we never really shut down. We took off during COVID, and so right now a lot of people are doing things virtually, and there's not a lot of places for you to drop in and do an interview or drop in and get services. And so it's kind of another part of our whole thing of eradicating barriers. We're bringing it to you, and so that that's not a barrier for you anymore, and then you can choose what you do with it at that point. And just making sure that people have access to things
where they're at, they don't need to jump over any hoops. Where you're at is where 100%. You deserve these services.
And you don't owe us anything for it. Not
always
a picture.
Free. Always free with CTCT.
We've had a lot of people reach out to us and ask, we want to help the houseless community, but they have no idea where to start. What direction would you guide those people to if they came and asked what can they do to help the houseless community?
I would guide them directly to our Umoja team because, and I would say this because our Umoja team is very intentional as well, with our other services. They don't just go out and serve food to people. They talk to them, right? So they're talking to you and they're asking you, what do you need? What do you want to see in your change kit? And I think that a lot of times we have this, as people who help, right? I'm a trained, social worker. And so, you want to help people out. We think that we know how to help people, and we don't.
It's a bad presumption.
We don't know how to help people. People know what they need. And so empowering people to voice what they need is something that we also work towards here. So I think that would be the best part. Go out with our Umoja team and see how they ask.
Gotcha. And that's the Umoja team?
Umoja,
Yeah. Umoja team. Is there a separate website, or can they find that on changetoday.org?
There's an Amazon list, so if you're looking for something directly to do, you can reach out to the Umoja team. You can be out there doing moving 100%. The stuff, talking to people. There's also an Amazon list, I believe, that is like, because these chain kits are awesome. We've got like hand warmers, toenail clippers, razors, gels, like all of this stuff. Contraceptives, condoms, like things that you would maybe not think of, but they're all on that list. And if you want to donate, you can donate cash money, which we always accept.
Right.
Because that allows us to do stuff like when we're like, oh, we would like to buy a Surface tablet, we can buy that. But there's also like the material needs of the like hand warmers when it gets cold, socks, like sunblock in the summer, like that kind of stuff. That's like preventative of other issues.
Tents, tarps, those kind of things.
Yep.
I know, like COVID, we're in a global pandemic, and I know that's like kind of not really thrown a wrench in things, but really like forced people to change the way that they like approach these problems in the city. We were wondering what kind of like specific things, what kind of aspects have you specifically had to change or like think about in a new light now that there's a global pandemic happening?
I think it's kind of interesting for Change Today, Change Tomorrow because we got our start during the pandemic. Like prior to the pandemic, Change Today, Change Tomorrow was really Taylor and Nannie doing a lot of work. That's literally what it was. We had a board, but like it was Taylor and Nannie, like Nannie was cooking in her kitchen, right? And they were just showing up downtown, handing stuff out to people. We got our like officialness during the pandemic. We took off during the pandemic. So we started with the regulations as they are now, if that makes sense. And so we've kind of not really had to adapt because like that, it was our option then. Like, so we've figured out like a good way to do in-person stuff while being safe, while like wearing a mask, while making sure things are sanitized because we had no other option. So it's hard to like, there wasn't really a change for us during the pandemic because we started in the heart of it.
Yeah, I feel like if there were any changes, it was along the lines of meeting people's needs, right? Like the cleaning supplies, stuff like that. Like, it's that stuff is really expensive. And being able 100%. To include that, those go out and feed. There's sometimes that goes out and feed the West bags if people request it. So
we try and put at least sanitizer in all of our
and masks
in our
stuff like that, because it's like if you don't have a mask you can't go into a grocery store.
Like exactly what Tyler said. I didn't think about that. I was like, we've been doing this stuff during the pandemic, but yes, as far as people's needs, then we've catered our needs to fit pandemic needs. Like I know when we first started, like Taylor was making bleach, like you know, for people because
my first day here was bleach day.
Bleach Bleach Mondays I think it was, and so like we were catering to those needs of the community. I know that we've put together like COVID kits for families sometimes.
Tala is making, she's doing a Clean the West program. We're doing some community assessment for that right now to see where people would need us, would want us to step in and help out with that stuff.
I know you said a lot of stuff is virtual now that we're in the pandemic, but I know a lot of people don't have access to a computer, like regular internet access. How do you guys go about reaching out to those people or those families and communities in situations like that?
I think because we still have a lot of our programming in person, so like coming to mind is our Healthy Change events, right? And we do that at St. George's Gym. So a lot of times, even if we're not having a lot of like traffic into the gym because of COVID or whatever else, we're going outside and being like, hey, we have food. Like you like dropping it in people's cars, take the food. And then also like we're intentional about our marketing. And so for Bless the Block, like we have signs up in West End neighborhoods saying that this is what we have going on, so that people can not only like, you know, social media of course is a major marketing tool, but you can see it if you don't have access to those things. And then I think the best thing that we have is our board. Honestly, our board directly reflects our community, so that people who are on our board live in the West End, and so then you have a direct like mouth to mouth contact that is like almost forgotten now, but still works very effectively. And so I think that that's how we get a lot of our just as far as people knowing what Change Today, Change Tomorrow does. It's because we have a presence literally in the community, because we've been intentional about how we reflect the community.
We do a lot of canvassing. We knock on doors. We talk to people and say like, oh, what did your neighbor say? Like, do they need food too? Like that kind of stuff. We rely on those contacts within the community because people know who's in need, and they can help other people too.
So when you guys want to move everything all together, that'd be like the 4 hubs moving into one large building. You probably leave pocket change
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Since it was
Yeah.
intentionally
Yeah.
like put there.
Put
and
in
everything.
the Nulu area. Yeah.
Yes, I think we're hoping as soon as we can get it done, like planning over the next year. We're already kind of working on it. We've got a realtor that's kind of looking at spaces.
Cool.
I think we're just trying to be very intentional about owning, and not not that we are opposed to leasing or anything like that. We want a Black-led organization to own a space in West Louisville. Like, we don't want to buy from someone who has already gentrified the area. And so we're very concerned about making sure that that land is Black held, right? So even if we outgrow the space and we don't need the space anymore, then we get to control how people interact and move in and out of that space. And it's not, up to like some random white man with money to tell people what they can do with the space, or if we're just going to leave it barren and nobody do anything with the space, right? Because that's how things tend to function around here. And so as far as our development, we really, really, really are looking for a building that can encompass everything that we have going on in one space in the West End. And if for some reason we have to leave that building, we want to be able to own that space, because I think that the concern is like with Black people having land access in the West End. I think a lot of time the city and the state gets it wrong when they decide that they want to work with these big contractors, right? Or they want to work with these big wealthy people and give them deals on land that they wouldn't give to regular West End residents, right? And so as the disruptors and the change makers that we are, we don't like that. Like, that's a barrier. Like, we want that to not happen. So like, we're looking forward to purchasing and having our own space in the West End. So we'll continue to fundraise for that and continue to tell people that that's what we need, because I think that just goes a long way.
I think you touched on a lot of things there. So one, like, we know people like Gil Holland have been circling
100%.
around Portland and, the West End in general for a while now. And we just recently saw the state government try to push through that TIF. I personally didn't really understand or have any idea about. So to hear that you guys are going to go in and buy that property, I agree. I think it's really important. I think it's important that the West End is owned by the people that are living there ultimately. And I don't know if there's a question in here. I agree with you guys so much, and I really hope that you guys get that. And do you guys have any plans in helping other Black residents and or people trying to obtain land in the West End before this big gentrification hit, like that's inevitably coming?
Yes. So I think from the beginning, Taylor is just like this like mega mind of things, right? And so is Nannie as well. Like, just all these ideas that are like swimming right all the time through their heads. And so like from the jump, that's been one of the things that we wanted, right? We want not just like building space in the West End, we want like land, like like open space, right? Your green space, we want that as well, in order to empower the community to like use this is yours.
Especially perhaps maybe like these empty green spaces that people in the East End or other places have been sitting on for 40, 50 years just waiting for it to somehow be valuable, when it could be valuable to the people that live there right now.
Now. And I think that goes to the fact of with our transitional housing, we're looking at like housing that's out there, right? There's a lot of places that are just out there. Honestly, in like some of the newer like looking that we've done, you can't figure out who owns it. It's like playing, you're like chasing your tail, trying to figure out who owns this property. And then when you figure it out, you can never get a hold of anybody, right? But it's like a few people own everything. Yes. But you can't get a hold of anybody to see who owns it, how we can get it from you. And so like that's a big problem. Because I think there's a lot of people who are interested in developing, right? And a lot of people who are interested in developing in a sense as in like West End residents who want to buy these homes and do something with them, regardless of what they want to do. I'm not talking like Gil Holland developing.
I think that there's a big, for a lot of white people, like one, gentrification is a big new topic for them. Like one, they thought it was good, and now they were like, oh wait, it's not good. And now they're like, but what other option?
What else are we supposed to do?
What else are we supposed to do? Right? And I think that people have this big stick up their butt about what's the difference between developing, coming in and buying a property that you tried to put liens on or that you did shady stuff to get at a low price, and then put in an exorbitant amount of money and turn it into a house that is unaffordable versus a hardworking family who wants to come in, buy a house, put work into it, and then gain an equity in their home.
Yes.
You know, and I think that a lot of times I get pushed back when we talk about gentrification because they think that I'm against anyone who wants to come into a working neighborhood to get that equity in the home. And I hope that we could all agree, no matter what, that we want working people to be able to do that. To me, it's a big class issue.
It definitely
you
is.
want people of a lower class to be able to have access to land,
Yes.
so that they can own things.
Yes.
And I don't know if you want to touch on maybe just the way that gentrification plays into Black people's inability, or people of color's inability, and the barriers that white supremacy's created to keep them from owning land.
Yeah, I think that a lot of the issue is that at one time in Louisville, right, prior to redlining and a lot of different things, Black people did own that land. It's not new to Black people to own land, to work land, to cultivate land, to develop it. We've done that for centuries. The issue becomes is when we don't have that lack of awareness that those things were taken from us. For some reason, it's this idea that, you know, like white supremacy is this thing, right? And so we get these things and we cultivate them and we make them into very great things, and then something happens and it's gone. And then we're the problem, right? And so then it's like, oh, we can't let Black people buy this land and do anything with it because they're gonna insert racist, microaggressive stereotype here. But we can sell it to Gil Holland for $1 because he's going to develop it and it sits there, right? And so like it's this fear that somehow by allowing Black people to like move into this space and use it for what we need it for, that we're going to don't know. Like, I can't really put a grasp on. I can't understand the concept, but you'll sell it to Gil Holland for $1 for him to sit on it. It's just crazy to think that you have to prove, even like in the nonprofit structure, right? And gaining access to the spaces. It's like, I have to continue to prove to you that I'm doing the work that I'm already doing, right? Like, so people should be like jumping over themselves, right? Like Louisville Metro, like major entities should be jumping over themselves to give us a space.
I agree.
We shouldn't be searching to buy a space.
They should be bending over backwards to give you
because
something.
We've made the impact already.
Yes.
The impact has been made.
And
we've made impact with the little resources that we have that people who have been sitting here for decades and centuries have not made.
And what do you guys think that barrier between you guys and Metro is? Does Metro want data? Does Metro want, like, I know that they're definitely asking for too much, but what is it that they're asking for that you shouldn't have to give them to get that money?
Yes, it's like data. It's like
and there's no data.
White supremacist structure things, right?
They want you
it's the research. It's stuff that are
it's stuff that we don't have time for because we're actually doing the work.
One of the
we got an entire staff member. His name is Jason, who is dedicated to basically dealing with the grant structure within nonprofits by themselves.
100%.
They demand the data, they demand the narratives, they want to know everybody's business about everything, every single line item. They want to pick through who you are, what you're doing, and why you're doing it that way. And that's not fair. Yeah. And especially because there's no data on the west end of Louisville because it's not 100%. Something that people have prioritized. And that is the responsibility of not only like institutions who are supposed to be doing that, but academia as well. Yes. U of L is not doing that. Spalding is not. None of these schools are like actually investing in like, this is stuff that you could be doing and is actually applicable to your students.
So they're trying to make you do it instead.
Yes. And that's what our community assessments are about. That's what we're trying to upend, is also because we recognize that when academic people are coming in to try to do stuff, they are implementing barrier-ridden structures that do not allow people to get the information that they need to be able to actively get the help that they need.
Right. That's one of my favorite things about CTCT is that you guys offer barrier-free services to everyone. And I think that structure should be more promoted and flourish, but there's that awful idea of abuse services. Yes. And it sounds to me that they want you to prove that your services aren't being abused in any way. Right. But
we don't care.
Yeah. Can we just talk about why we shouldn't care about what the fuck people do with stuff when they go home with it? You know?
People, like, if you need a bag of groceries...
Sorry, that's my language.
No, you're good. No, if you need a bag of groceries, you should get a bag of groceries. And you shouldn't have to prove to me that you don't make $25,000, right? Like, you shouldn't have to prove to me you need a bag of groceries. Come pick up your bag of groceries. Or we'll deliver your bag of groceries to you, and all we need is your address and your number so I can tell you when I'm there. And there's no reason why people should have to prove Social Security and all of these other identification forms, and you need all your tax forms you've ever had to prove that I don't have groceries this week.
A lot of the community members too, it's very interesting when we do provide these services, feel like that's stuff that they have to offer to us.
Yeah.
They'll try.
I remember specifically when we did Bless the Block, I was working with where people were pulling through to pick up toys, and they were like, we didn't know if we needed to bring our kids to prove to you that we had children, so they were like 5 kids in the back seat and stuff like that, but I was just like, no, we believe you. Here, have some Legos. Like,
And part of it is that, like, historically for marginalized community, for poor folks, for black folks, for, like, indigenous folks, for other people of color, right? Like, we've already put into this fucking system way more than people deserve, right? Like, we've given the system way more than the system ever deserved. At this point, you owe us. Yeah. So I shouldn't have to prove shit to you. Give me what I asked for. Like,
and say that person could afford groceries for the week. By you giving them groceries, they now have money in their hand for something else that they weren't going to have.
100%. I think that, like, I grew up with a single mom, right? And so, like, yes, exactly that system. If somebody could give you this, then maybe this week is also my child's birthday, right? And so maybe I have the money now to get a cake. I have the money now to go buy a toy. And that's not for me to choose for you. I shouldn't tell you, no, you have to use your money on groceries, right? If there's we have access to these groceries. Like, why can't I just give the grocery to you? Why do you have to fill out a form? Why do you have to prove that you have 3 kids in your house? I don't care.
I just think that there's a big disconnect with people because I see people who are desperate online, who have terrible takes on homelessness. They are bothered by the homelessness in their community. They don't want to see it. They see all homeless as blanket drug addicts.
Right.
And even if they are drug addicts, that they deserve, treatment too. But they are saying there's no services, or those people don't want to accept those services. And the problem with a lot of the services that are offered here in Louisville for the homeless is that there are too many barriers. You have to separate 100%. From your partner. You have to separate from your dog. You have to throw away all your stuff.
Yes.
You just etc. etc.
Sober.
You have to be sober, which I don't think a lot of people who have homes could do.
Right. 100%.
Yeah.
100%, and we're not talking about that.
Yeah. And then
how many drug tests do you give in the East End before people can buy properties?
Yeah. That's a good one.
None.
That is good.
Okay,
exactly.
Great. Got it.
But then there's people like you guys who are offering services without barriers, but we're not funding into them. And I think that's like the intrinsic problem, that there's just this big fear that people with money think that poor people, or especially people of color, don't know what to do with the services or that stuff that you give them. And I just think that's why your narrative is so important, because 1, it's barrier free, and then 2, you guys are asking them what they actually need. You're not trying to guess. I'm sorry, I guess I'm just talking now about how awesome you are.
No, it's fun. Like, there's a blanket form of this, like, thought of that we're not going to do the right thing with the things that we have, but in our communities, we've always made more than what we have. And I think that we understand that, right? Like, as poor folk, as black folk, as indigenous folks, people of color, as people who have been marginalized, right? Like, we understand that you get, like, the system gives you shit and you make flowers out of it, right? Like, you get crumbs and you make pie out of it. And I think that because we've been resilient in that way for so long, that the system honestly expects it. They're like, no, why would I give you more? Because if you made pie out of these crumbs, like, if I give you a pie, then what the fuck are you gonna do? Right. And it gets to that point, and I think it's like, not like to get all out of crazy here, but like, it's fear. It's really fear. I think all of it. I think any system that's being maintained that's not helpful for the majority is only being maintained because of fear of those top people, right? Like, you're scared that if you gave CTCT $5 million, like, what would we be doing out here?
Thanks for just going through that, because I just feel like there's so many people that doesn't connect with, or even that maybe fans of you guys that don't don't understand why maybe you're not getting that funding, and really it's that bigger academia picture that they're trying to make you bend over backwards to prove.
I think it's the way that we come at this barrier-free access and the unapologeticness that we come at with like addressing things in general. There's a really big concern for if that was normal. Like if that's how nonprofit worked, one, I think our nonprofits could do a lot better, right? If we were working at barrier-free and working at unapologeticness and serving people, right? Like, because we have
Centering the margins.
Yes. If we did that, then that changes how the system works. And I love that like CTCT does that. Because it's necessary. It's necessary to do those things. It's necessary to break barriers, because if we don't, then who does?
It upsets the power structure that's happening over there, because what that whole system is saying is that Jill Holland knows better what should happen in the West End than the people in the West End. And that exact kind of mentality exists throughout the nonprofit world, that these big philanthropists and stuff like that who are basically just atoning for the sins of their companies, but they have a better idea because they're rich, because they've made it. They know the way that society needs to be formed to be able to say, like, okay, we need to put a library here, like stuff like that. But what I think our organization is saying is that no, that's not what it is. We need to be asking people directly what they need, what they want, investing in their autonomy, because the underlying notion of that supremacy within like the we give to you is that like you are inferior, right? Like we are able to dictate, we give you your 100%. Food, like we understand like what is going on in your community more than you, and that's just baseline racist.
And the key word there is autonomy, is giving people the ability to
and it's
to do for themselves.
For white people, that's hard because it's relinquishing control. And it's the control that they've had for 50 years over the West End. And that's why it's scary for a lot of people to move into spaces where we are creating, because we're upsetting the norm of saying you get to dictate how we are going to do things just because you're giving us money.
You guys are how a nonprofit should be run versus how we see nonprofits are run, in which, CEOs profit off of the whole entire system. Like, I've heard terrible things about Wayside's food, to the point where they, they purposefully cut corners so that the profits on top are still, what they are. And to understand, I didn't understand until recently that nonprofits, they have that 80-20 split where only 20% is going to overhead. So it's just the idea of...
Supposed to.
Supposed to. Yes, key word is supposed to. But, like, to know that there are people out there that are purposefully... They want to keep people down so that their system can keep going on. Like, I know in Smoketown we've talked about affordable housing a lot. And they like to talk about the AMI and, this and that. And they want it to be 30% AMI, but they want the cheapest house that they can build is still $150K. And that's not affordable for a 30% AMI when you find out that 30% AMI is only $30K a year. And if you're making 50% AMI, that's still 27. And just to put that into perspective, if you're making $30K a year, you're only making about $13 to $14 before taxes.
Been there.
And as we all know, minimum wage is $7, and we have like a huge amount of people here, particularly in the West End, who make less than $18,000 a year. So when you're talking about affordable housing and you're all like jazzed up about, for me, just because I know Smoketown so well, it's East Breckenridge and the affordable housing units that they're putting in. We're still talking about houses that are going to sell for $150,000.
Why is that a discussion?
Why is that a discussion? And why ultimately when we say, why can't you sell that house for less? Why can't it be less?
Can it be $1?
Why
can't for $1?
Why can't it be $1? Like, why does that person need to spend $150K? And it's said that, then we wouldn't be able to build the next house. And really what they're saying is that they wouldn't make a profit.
Yes. 100%.
And it's just the insidiousness of nonprofits, I think, has soured on a lot of people. And so you guys are just such a fresh of breath air, And I guess this again is just another speech about how I like you guys. But yeah.
I think a lot of time we get like advice on how to do the work that we're already doing, and we're like, that's not We didn't ask for you to tell us how to do stuff we've been doing.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, you guys
Yeah.
don't need to be told how to be done. You just need some more money.
Yeah, but that plays
let
into
us-
kind of the attitude we were talking about earlier, where it's
Absolutely.
like people think they know better, and that's something that we all have to let go of a little
We're
bit.
hoping that people will watch this and maybe drop some of those old predispositions you have about what you think a nonprofit should be, and think about either volunteering a bit of your time, a bit of your money, or any sort of resources that you may have to change today, change tomorrow. Beargrass Thunder is a huge supporter and believer of what they're doing. Barrier-free access to everything that they provide is so important, and we're not the ones that need to decide what people need. They're the ones who need to tell us. So Beargrass Thunder wants you to donate everything you got to CTCT. If you need a nonprofit, they're our number one on our list.